Volume 2, Part 5 of Herodotus's Histories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Histories, Volume 2, by Herodotus of Halicarnassus. Translated by E.D. Godley. Volume 2, Part 5. Convinced that they alone were not able to repel Darius's army in open warfare, the Scythians sent messengers to their neighbors, whose kings had already gathered and were deliberating on the presumption that a great army was marching against them. The assembled kings were those of the Tauri, Agathyrsi, Nuri, Man-eaters, Black-cloaks, Gilani, Budini, and Sauromate. Among these, the Tauri have the following customs. All shipwrecked men, and any Greeks whom they capture in their sea raids, they sacrifice to the virgin goddess as I will describe. After the first rites of sacrifice, they strike the victim on the head with a club. According to some, they then place the head on a pole, and throw the body off the cliff on which their temple stands. Others agree as to the head, but say that the body is buried, not thrown off the cliff. The Tauri themselves say that this deity to whom they sacrifice is Agamemnon's daughter, Iphigenia. As for enemies whom they defeat, each cuts his enemy's head off and carries it away to his house, where he places it on a tall pole and stands it high above the dwelling, above the smoke vent for the most part. These heads, they say, are set up to guard the whole house. The Tauri live by plundering and war. The Agathyrsi are the most refined of men, and especially given to wearing gold. Their intercourse with women is promiscuous, so that they may be consanguine with one another, and, all being relations, not harbour jealousy or animosity toward one another. In the rest of their customs they are like the Thracians. The Nuri follow Scythian customs, but one generation before the advent of Darius's army, they happened to be driven from their country by snakes, for their land produced great numbers of these, and still more came down on them out of the desolation on the north, until at last the Nuri were so afflicted they left their own country, and lived among the Budini. It may be that these people are wizards, for the Scythians, and the Greeks settled in Scythia, say that once a year every one of the Nuri becomes a wolf for a few days, and changes back again to his former shape. Those who tell this tale do not convince me, but they tell it none the less, and swear to its truth. The man-eaters are the most savage of all men in their way of life. They know no justice and obey no law. They are nomads, wearing a costume like the Scythian, but speaking a language of their own. Of all these, they are the only people that eat men. The Black-cloaks all wear black clothing, from which they get their name. Their customs are Scythian. The Budini are a great and populous nation. The eyes of them all are very bright, and they are ruddy. They have a city built of wood, called Galanus. The wall of it is 3 3/4 miles in length on each side of the city. This wall is high and all of wood, and their houses are wooden, and their temples, for there are temples of Greek gods among them, furnished in Greek style, with images and altars and shrines of wood, and they honor Dionysius every 2 years with festivals and revelry. For the Gilani are by their origin Greeks, who left their trading ports to settle among the Budini, and they speak a language half Greek and half Scythian. But the Budini do not speak the same language as the Gilani, nor is their manner of life the same. The Budini are indigenous, they are nomads, and the only people in these parts that eat fir cones. The Gilani are farmers, eating grain and cultivating gardens. They are altogether unlike the Budini in form and colouring. Yet the Greeks call the Budini too Gilani, but this is wrong. Their whole country is thickly wooded with every kind of tree. In the depth of the forest there is a great wide lake and a marsh surrounded by reeds. Otter is trapped in it, and beaver, besides certain square-faced creatures whose skins are used to trim mantles, and their testicles are used by the people to heal sickness of the womb. About the Sauromate, the story is as follows. When the Greeks were at war with the Amazons, whom the Scythians call Oirpata, a name signifying in our tongue killers of men, for in Scythian a man is Oori and to kill is Pata, the story runs that after their victory on the Thermodon they sailed away, carrying in 3 ships as many Amazons as they had been able to take alive, and out at sea the Amazons attacked the crew and killed them. But they knew nothing about ships, or how to use rudder or sail or oar, and with the men dead they were at the mercy of waves and winds, until they came to the cliffs by the Maeotian Lake. This place is in the country of the free Scythians. The Amazons landed there, and set out on their journey to the inhabited country, and seizing the first troop of horses they met, they mounted them and raided the Scythian lands. The Scythians could not understand the business, for they did not recognize the women's speech or their dress or their nation, but wondered where they had come from, and imagined them to be men all of the same age, and met the Amazons in battle. The result of the fight was that the Scythians got possession of the dead, and so came to learn that their foes were women. Therefore, after deliberation, they resolved by no means to slay them as before, but to send their youngest men to them, of a number corresponding, as they guessed, to the number of the women. They directed these youths to camp near the Amazons, and to imitate all that they did; if the women pursued them, not to fight, but to flee; and when the pursuit stopped, to return and camp near them. This was the plan of the Scythians, for they desired that children be born of the women. The young men who were sent did as they were directed. When the Amazons perceived that the youths meant them no harm, they let them be, but every day the two camps drew nearer to each other. Now the young men, like the Amazons, had nothing but their arms and their horses, and lived as did the women, by hunting and plunder. At midday the Amazons would scatter and go apart from each other singly or in pairs, roaming apart for greater comfort. The Scythians noticed this and did likewise, and as the women wandered alone, a young man laid hold of one of them, and the woman did not resist him but let him do his will; and since they did not understand each other's speech, and she could not speak to him, she signed with her hand that he should come the next day to the same place, and bring another youth with him, showing by signs that there should be two, and she would bring another woman with her. The youth went away and told his comrades, and the next day he came himself with another to the place, where he found the Amazon and another with her awaiting them. When the rest of the young men learned of this, they had intercourse with the rest of the Amazons. Presently they joined their camps and lived together, each man having for his wife the woman with whom he had had intercourse at first. Now the men could not learn the women's language, but the women mastered the speech of the men, and when they understood each other, the men said to the Amazons, "We have parents and possessions, therefore let us no longer live as we do, but return to our people and be with them, and we will still have you, and no others, for our wives." To this the women replied, "We could not live with your women, for we and they do not have the same customs. We shoot the bow and throw the javelin and ride, but have never learned women's work, and your women do none of the things of which we speak, but stay in their wagons and do women's work, and do not go out hunting or anywhere else. So we could never agree with them. If you want to keep us for wives and to have the name of fair men, go to your parents, and let them give you the allotted share of their possessions, and after that let us go and live by ourselves." The young men agreed and did this. So when they had been given the allotted share of possessions that fell to them, and returned to the Amazons, the women said to them, "We are worried and frightened how we are to live in this country after depriving you of your fathers and doing a lot of harm to your land. Since you propose to have us for wives, do this with us. Come, let us leave this country, and live across the Tanais River." To this too the youths agreed, and crossing the Tanais, they went a 3 days' journey east from the river, and a 3 days' journey north from Lake Maeotis, and when they came to the region in which they now live, they settled there. Ever since then the women of the Sauromatei have followed their ancient ways; they ride out hunting, with their men or without them; they go to war, and dress the same as the men. The language of the Sauromatei is Scythian, but not spoken in its ancient purity, since the Amazons never learned it correctly. In regard to marriage, it is the custom that no maiden weds until she has killed a man of the enemy, and some of them grow old and die unmarried, because they cannot fulfill the law. The kings of the aforesaid nations having gathered, then, the Scythian messengers came and laid everything before them, explaining how the Persian, now that the whole of the other continent was subject to him, had crossed over to their continent by a bridge across the neck of the Bosphorus, and how, having crossed it and subjugated the Thracians, he was now bridging the Ister, so as to make that whole region subject to him like the others. "By no means stand aside and let us be destroyed," they said. "Rather let us unite and oppose this invader. If you will not, then we shall either be driven out of our country, or stay and make terms. For what is to become of us if you will not help us? And afterward it will not be easy for you either, for the Persian has come to attack you no less than us, and when he has subjugated us he will not be content to leave you alone. We will give you a convincing proof of what we